The alien princess thought her human lover was weak until he drew his sword. The storm above the citadel shimmered like liquid glass, threads of violet lightning weaving through the clouds as if the heavens themselves were restless. Arin stood at the balcony's edge, feeling the electric taste of ozone on his tongue, the alien air dense with the hum of unseen machines. Behind him, the towers of the Virellan Empire curved upward like coral bones, glowing faintly with their bioluminescent veins. He had been called weak since the day he married Princess Soryn, the emerald-eyed heir whose beauty could still silence an entire hall. To her people, he was a novelty, the fragile human from a dying world, too soft to fight, too gentle to command. Yet in that quiet moment, as thunder rolled across the alien sky, Arin's hand brushed the hilt of the blade hidden beneath his cloak, and something inside him whispered that the storm had finally come for him too. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. The storm above the citadel shimmered like liquid glass, threads of violet lightning weaving through the clouds as if the heavens themselves were restless. Arin stood at the balcony's edge, feeling the electric taste of ozone on his tongue, the alien air dense with the hum of unseen machines. Behind him, the towers of the Virellan Empire curved upward like coral bones, glowing faintly with their bioluminescent veins. He had been called weak since the day he married Princess Soryn, the emerald-eyed heir whose beauty could still silence an entire hall. To her people, he was a novelty, the fragile human from a dying world, too soft to fight, too gentle to command. Yet in that quiet moment, as thunder rolled across the alien sky, Arin's hand brushed the hilt of the blade hidden beneath his cloak, and something inside him whispered that the storm had finally come for him too. The war drums began at dusk, deep and distant, echoing through the citadel like a pulse from the planet's molten heart. Arin watched soldiers of crystal armor march in lines that shimmered under the stormlight, their movements synchronized like reflections in fractured mirrors. He had studied their patterns for months, memorizing the gaps, the rhythm, the slight tremor that betrayed fatigue in their alien bodies. Humans had no claws, no carapace, no radiant energy fields, but they had patience and a way of seeing weakness where others saw perfection. Soryn's advisor said Earth's warriors were obsolete relics of a primitive past, but Arin knew that steel and instinct could still shape fate. When Soryn entered the balcony hall, her scent carried the faint sweetness of rain-soaked leaves. Her ceremonial armor gleamed with living light, the symbiotic filaments crawling gently across her skin as if the suit itself adored her. She looked at Arin with eyes that had seen battles among the stars, then softened only slightly when she noticed he still wore his plain human coat. "You shouldn't stand out here," she said. "The air's ionized. It burns human lungs." Her voice was kind but distant, the tone one uses for fragile glass. Arin smiled faintly. "It reminds me of home," he said. She frowned, perhaps unsure whether that was pride or defiance. He followed her through the winding halls where every surface pulsed with a heartbeat not their own. The Virellan palace was alive, its walls breathing faintly, translucent like sea creatures. They passed nobles who bowed to Soryn and looked through Arin as though he were invisible. One whispered in their tongue, a word he had learned enough to know meant pet. Soryn didn't rebuke them. Perhaps she thought shielding him from insult would shame him further. He said nothing, because silence was the first weapon humans ever learned, the art of enduring until the right moment to strike. At the Grand Hall, the Emperor's Council assembled around a pool of light that projected a holographic warfront, a nebula of crimson flares and drifting ships. The border colonies burned again, and this time the invaders were not human, but the Kothren, a race of winged predators older than the Empire itself. Arin listened as generals argued in harmonic tones, their voices blending into music that made human ears ache. They discussed quantum lances, orbital sieges, extinction protocols, always the same arrogance of overwhelming power. No one mentioned the cost. When Arin spoke softly, "Every empire falls when it believes itself invincible, the hall went silent. Soryn's hand brushed his arm, warning him, but the Emperor's secondary heart flickered in disapproval. Human philosophy, the old one hissed. Charming. Irrelevant. That night, in their private chamber, the tension hung thicker than the storm outside. Soryn removed her armor, each plate detaching in a shimmer of blue light, revealing pale skin marked by faint scars that looked like stars across her back. Arin had once traced them with reverence. Now, he only watched in silence. "You embarrass me," she said quietly. "You think they don't already doubt me for marrying you?" He met her gaze, calm and steady. "I think they doubt you less if you won the war." She froze, surprised by his tone. "And you?" she asked, voice sharp. "What would you know of war?" He hesitated, then said simply, enough to know when one is lost before it begins. The argument faded into the hum of the palace. Hours later, when sleep refused him, Arin slipped through the servants' corridors down to the vaults where forbidden artifacts were kept. The blade he carried had no energy core, no singing circuits, just forged steel quenched in memory. It was the last weapon ever made by human hands before Earth fell. The Virellans had dismissed it as primitive art, letting it hang as a curiosity on their wall. Arin had reclaimed it, polishing away centuries of dust. Tonight, as thunder rolled, he tested its balance, still perfect. The Empire believed strength lay in light and plasma. Humanity had once known it lived in resolve. When dawn came, the sky bled gold through clouds of sapphire gas. From the balcony, Arin saw the invasion fleet like black needles piercing the horizon. Alarm chimes resonated through the palace in deep harmonic waves. Soryn appeared beside him, her armor rewoven around her form, eyes fierce with purpose. "You will stay inside the shielded chambers," she ordered. "The Cothran kill for sport. They do not honor treaties." Arin inclined his head. "And what if they breach your shields?" She hesitated, then turned away, unwilling to imagine it. As she left, Arin whispered to himself, "Then I will show them what fragility can do." The first bombardment cracked the upper spires, raining shards of luminous crystal into the courtyards. Alien soldiers screamed in harmonics that split the air. Arin moved through chaos unseen, the human's forgotten art of subtlety guiding him between collapsing corridors. He reached the defense nexus, a chamber of light where technomancers weaved energy shields through gesture and song. When one fell, gasping as the Cothran's psychic shockwave hit, Arin caught her before she fell completely. "You can't," she gasped. "Your mind, it's not adapted." But he placed her hand on the console, steadying her until her focus returned. The other stared. No human should have endured that pulse. But Arin's pain was an old companion, grief, guilt, endurance, and no alien frequency could unmake that. By midday, the citadel's outer ring had fallen. Flames of white plasma devoured gardens and glass bridges, painting the sky with sorrow. Soryn's forces retreated toward the Heart Spire, where the Emperor commanded from his throne of living crystal. Arin found her there, issuing orders in rapid pulses of telepathic light, her voice merging with a hive of command nodes. He waited until she noticed him, and when she did, anger sparked in her tone. "I told you to stay hidden." He met her eyes calmly. "And I told you, if they breach the shields, I'll be there." She gestured at his simple sword. "With that toy, you'll die before you draw breath." Arin looked at the blade, then back at her. "Maybe, but I'll die human." Outside, the Cothran descended, winged shapes blotting the stormlight, claws like scythes gleaming in the air. One landed on the balcony, its screech vibrating the chamber's bones. Soryn raised her arm, summoning a pulse of radiant energy that shattered the creature mid-leap. But more followed, tearing through the barrier like knives through silk. Arin stepped beside her, eyes steady, blades still sheathed. "Fall back," she commanded. "I'll cover you." He shook his head. "You'll need both of us." And when she turned, incredulous, he drew the sword, a line of dull steel flashing once beneath the alien light, and the air itself seemed to hold its breath. The first creature lunged, its claws slicing through the air with a sound like breaking glass. But Arin moved differently than any Virellan had ever seen. He didn't shimmer or vanish or warp space around him. He simply stepped forward, body angled low, the way soldiers on ancient Earth had fought when the world still burned with oxygen and courage. The sword's edge met alien chitin with a hiss, and the monster's cry split the hall in two. Soryn's eyes widened. She had expected him to die instantly, but instead he turned, pivoting, letting the creature's momentum carry it past. His movements were efficient, almost mathematical, born of gravity and muscle rather than light. The blade, though dull by their standards, sang as it cut, a sound that vibrated with memory. Another Cothran landed behind him, wings beating with hurricane force, but Arin rolled beneath the strike, his breath steady. He'd fought once before, not in shining halls, but in the ruins of Earth when the oxygen domes failed and scavengers turned on each other. He remembered hunger like a teacher and fear like a rival. Each movement now was an echo of that past, a dialogue between survival and will. The Virellan guards hesitated. They had never seen blood spill without vaporizing into light, and their delay cost them precious seconds. Soryn finally recovered, energy flaring around her hand as she joined the fight beside him. For the first time since their union, they moved as one. When the last of the attackers fell, the chamber reeked of ionized air and burnt feathers. Arin leaned against a pillar, breathing hard, his knuckles white on the hilt. The blade's edge was chipped, but it had not broken. A small miracle of metallurgy his people had perfected when miracles were all they had left. Soryn stared at him, something unreadable crossing her expression. Awe, perhaps, or fear. That shouldn't be possible, she whispered. He looked up, a faint smile on his lips. You keep forgetting. Humans were born fighting for scraps of sunlight. Her mouth opened to reply, but an explosion from below shook the chamber, and the moment shattered like glass underfoot. They descended through ruined corridors, light flickering through shattered veins of bioarchitecture. Smoke and the metallic tang of blood filled the air. Soryn moved with fierce determination, issuing commands through her neural link, but her soldiers were falling faster than reinforcements could arrive. Arin followed close, sword drawn, eyes scanning every corridor intersection. We have to reach the Emperor, she said, her voice tight. If he falls, the core symbiont collapses. The whole palace dies with him. Arin nodded. Then we go through the maintenance conduits. They won't expect that. She glanced at him, surprised he knew the layout at all, but didn't argue. They entered a narrow tunnel lit only by the pulse of alien roots embedded in the walls. Each beat of the light cast brief shadows over Arin's face. Human, yes, but hardened by something deeper than any augmentation. Behind them, echoes of battle rose like thunder. Soryn spoke softly as they moved. You were trained, she said. Not by us, by your own kind. He hesitated before answering. Before Earth surrendered, some of us learned to fight without armies. We learned that when you have nothing left, you still have choice. She absorbed his words silently, perhaps recognizing in them a faith she had long forgotten. The conduit opened into the Emperor's sanctum, a vast chamber of mirrored crystal and hovering data spheres. The Emperor himself stood at its center, his twin hearts beating in translucent rhythm, surrounded by corona of defense drones. But even he looked smaller now, his light dimmed by fear. Cothran breaches glimmered through the upper vaults. Daughter, he intoned as Soryn approached, you bring the human. His voice dripped disdain. He has earned the right to stand here, she said sharply. Arin bowed slightly, his gaze fixed on the encroaching shadows. We're out of time, he murmured. The Emperor turned as a shriek tore through the chamber's roof. The Cothran queen herself descending in a storm of wings and black flame. Her presence pressed on every mind like a crushing tide. Virellan soldiers faltered, some collapsing under the psychic weight. Arin gritted his teeth, forcing breath through pain as the queen's voice echoed in his skull. Little thing of dust and water, why do you fight for those who despise you? He steadied his stance, the blade trembling slightly in his grip. Because, he thought back, we fight for what we choose, not for what we're told to worship. And then, in an act no one could predict, he stepped forward. The queen's talon struck with the force of a meteor, but Arin raised his sword and caught the blow, not with power, but with geometry, angling his wrist to redirect the impact. Sparks erupted, lighting his face in gold and silver. The Emperor's guards gasped. No human reflex should have been fast enough. Soryn shouted his name, but he was already moving, cutting at the tendons of the creature's forearm, where even light could not regenerate fast enough. His blade lodged halfway through, but he twisted with a grunt, leveraging the weight of his entire body, and the limbs severed in a cascade of dark ichor. The queen screamed, her wings collapsing inward, and Soryn unleashed a burst of radiant energy that speared through the wound Arin had opened. When silence finally fell, the chamber was a ruin of shattered glass and fading light. Arin knelt, sword buried tip down in the floor, chest heaving. Soryn approached slowly, the glow of her armor dimming. "You should be dead," she whispered. He looked up, meeting her eyes with quiet exhaustion. "Humans are stubborn that way." She laughed once, a sound halfway between disbelief and relief, and knelt beside him. The Emperor watched them both, expression unreadable, then inclined his head slightly. Perhaps the fragility of flesh hides strength unseen. It was as close to respect as any Virellan had ever given. Outside, the rain began again, washing the blood from the citadel's stones. Soryn helped Arin to his feet, her hand lingering longer than duty required. "You risked everything," she said softly. "You fought as if this world were your own." He looked out at the burning horizon, where alien ships still glowed against the storm. "Maybe it is now," he replied. "Or maybe it's just another world that needed reminding that weakness isn't the absence of strength. It's what teaches us how to use it." She studied him in silence, her expression softer than he had ever seen. "Then perhaps," she said, "we both have much to learn." As dawn broke fully, the citadel's towers glimmered with new light, not of the Empire's making but born of survival itself. The Cothran fleet was in retreat, their queen's death rippling through their hive mind like a severed cord. Soryn's people began to gather the wounded, their eyes wary, but no longer dismissive when they looked at the human among them. Arin stood at the balcony once more, the wind cool against his face. His sword hung loosely at his side, the metal dull but alive in his grip. Below, Soryn addressed her people, and for the first time, she spoke not of conquest or purity, but of alliance and endurance. When her speech ended, she joined him quietly. "You've changed them," she said. "You've changed me." Arin shook his head. "You changed yourself. I only reminded you what choice looks like." She smiled faintly. "And what will you do now, my human lover?" He gazed at the sky where thunder still murmured faintly. "Keep the sword sharp," he said, "and wait for the next storm." Soryn's laughter, soft and sincere, carried through the air, and for the first time since their union, it didn't sound like pity. It sounded like hope. The storm that had scarred the citadel finally broke into a soft rain, and the sky above Virellan Prime shimmered in layered hues of rose and silver. Arin stood at the edge of the high terrace, watching the light ripple across the horizon like a heartbeat reborn. The city beneath him was wounded but alive. Alien drones floated silently, mending fractures in the coral glass streets, while humans and Virellans worked side by side among the ruins. He had never seen such a sight, two species once separated by arrogance, now bound by necessity. Yet beneath the calm hum of repair, a deeper unease lingered. He could feel in the silence between words, in the way soldiers glanced at him when they thought he wasn't looking. Princess Soryn had become a symbol overnight, her victory speech replayed through the Empire's networks in 1,000 harmonics. But fame was a fragile armor, and Arin knew what followed triumph too soon: fear of change. The Council would not forget that their salvation had come from the hands of a human with a metal blade older than their civilization's light engines. In their minds, that act was both miracle and insult. He had seen that same look before on Earth, when people hailed heroes one day and buried them in suspicion the next. Soryn didn't speak of it yet, but he saw the tension behind her eyes, the calculation of a ruler who understood that power shifted like tidewater. When she entered the terrace, the light caught in her hair, scattering reflections like broken stars. She wore no armor now, only a simple robe of living silk that adjusted its hue to her mood. "You're thinking too loudly," she said, stepping beside him. Arin smiled faintly. "And you're listening too carefully." She leaned on the railing, her gaze sweeping the recovering city. "They'll question us," she said quietly. "They already do." He nodded. "That's what leaders are for, to be doubted until the work is done." Her laughter was soft but edged with fatigue. "You sound like my mother." "I'll take that as a compliment," he said, and for a moment their shared weariness turned almost tender. But tenderness was a luxury. Within hours, a messenger from the High Council arrived, his crystalline skin etched with ceremonial glyphs of disapproval. The message was simple. The Emperor demanded Soryn and her human husband attend an emergency convocation. No reason stated, none needed. Arin sensed the weight of tradition behind those words, the ancient machinery of politics sharpening its knives. Soryn prepared in silence, the living threads of her robe shifting into formal armor once more. When she turned to him, her expression was calm, but her eyes were not. "They will test you," she said. "They will try to make you yield before them." He tightened the strap of his worn coat. "Then I'll remember what Earth taught me. Never bow unless you choose the ground yourself." The convocation chamber was a cathedral of light suspended within the palace's heart, its walls alive with echoing glyphs that recorded every word spoken. The Emperor sat upon the high dais, his twin hearts pulsing in visible rhythm beneath translucent flesh. Around him, the counselors formed a circle, their forms luminous, their gazes sharp as blades. Soryn and Arin approached the center platform together, the union of alien nobility and human defiance standing in fragile balance. The Emperor's voice resonated through the chamber like thunder smoothed by time. "Daughter, you bring with you the one who wielded forbidden metal and spilled sacred blood." Arin felt the eyes of the council upon him, heavy and cold. "If your world's weapons could save us," one counselor said, "why did your world fall?" The question hung like smoke, intended to shame, to remind him of the fragility of flesh. But Arin met their gaze without flinching. "Because we forgot that strength isn't born in peace," he said quietly. "We built walls instead of will. We worshipped safety until it killed us. But some of us learned differently." He drew his sword slowly, not as a threat, but as proof. "This isn't power," he said. "It's memory. Every scar on this blade was earned by someone who refused to give up. Maybe that's what your empire needs now. Not more light, but more memory." The chamber fell silent, the sword's dull metal reflecting their luminous faces like a mirror they did not wish to see. Soryn stood beside him, voice steady but fierce. "He fought for us when none of you would. If that is weakness, then perhaps weakness is what keeps us alive." Her words rippled through the chamber, stirring unease. The Emperor's eyes glowed faintly. "You speak as though you would rewrite our creed." She inclined her head. "Perhaps it's time it was rewritten." For a moment, no one breathed. Then the Emperor lifted a single hand, signaling dismissal. "Leave us," he said softly. "Both of you. The council will deliberate." They exited into the dim corridor beyond, their footsteps echoing against the living walls. Arin exhaled slowly, tension leaving his shoulders. "Well," he murmured, "I think they liked me." Soryn's lips twitched despite herself. "You just told the Empire's elders they've forgotten how to fight." "Someone had to," he said, shrugging. "Besides, you married worse." "Impossible," she replied dryly, but the warmth in her voice betrayed her affection. Still, behind her humor, Arin sensed the storm brewing again. Empires did not yield easily, and neither did the shadows waiting beyond their stars. They returned to their quarters under watchful eyes. The corridors seemed narrower than before, the palace itself tense, as if it sensed rebellion within its veins. Soryn sat before the window where stars spilled across the dark, her armor half unwoven into a cloak of light. Arin removed his coat, setting his sword on the table between them. For a long while, neither spoke. The hum of the living walls was steady, like breathing. Finally, she said, "You shouldn't have challenged them. You don't understand how deep their fear runs." Arin studied the faint scars across his hands. "Maybe not, but I know fear better than they ever will. Fear doesn't end when you hide from it. It ends when you decide to walk through." She looked at him, her expression softened by exhaustion and something like pride. The silence between them deepened, but it wasn't cold. The war outside had bound them in ways diplomacy never could. Soryn reached for the sword, her fingers tracing the worn metal. "It's strange," she murmured. "This thing killed gods in your stories, didn't it? And yet it feels alive." Arin nodded. "Every weapon remembers the hand that held it. Maybe it remembers mine." She smiled faintly, setting it back down. "And what does it remember now?" He met her gaze. "That there's still something worth protecting." Outside, thunder rolled faintly over the far horizon, but this time the sound didn't promise destruction. It promised the calm before another trial. When morning came, the summons returned, but not from the Emperor. A shadow messenger, its form half made of light and whisper, appeared at their door. "The council has split," it said in a voice that seemed to echo from far underwater. "Some call for unity, others for exile." Arin exchanged a glance with Soryn. "Exile," he repeated. "For which of us?" The messenger's eyes, pools of shifting color, flicked briefly toward him. Then it dissolved into mist. The answer was clear enough. Soryn rose immediately, fury igniting across her form, her armor flaring to life. "They dare," she hissed. Arin laid a hand on her arm. "Let them. Exile's just another kind of freedom, if you choose it first." But choice was rarely that simple. Within the hour, soldiers came, polite, expressionless, armed with weapons that hummed like trapped thunder. They escorted them to a shuttle pad beneath the citadel's spine. No words were exchanged. The Emperor was not there. The gesture spoke loudly enough. The Empire could not risk a symbol of disobedience inside its walls. Arin looked back once at the towering city of glass and light, now a distant monument to both pride and survival. Soryn's hand found his, her grip unshaking. "They think this will silence us," she said. "They think they're preserving peace." "Peace," Arin murmured, "is just war in slower motion." The shuttle cut through the clouds, descending toward the outer colonies where refugees and soldiers mingled in uneasy alliance. The air here was thicker, the structures less perfect, a frontier of half-grown spires and dust-choked wind. To the Empire, it was exile. To Arin, it felt like home. The settlement welcomed Soryn cautiously, and him even less so, but necessity outweighed prejudice. The Catherine might have retreated, yet fragments of their fleet still prowled the system's edge. Commanders came to seek advice, some from curiosity, some from desperation. Arin spent his days among the engineers, teaching them the old human tricks of improvisation, how to turn weakness into leverage, simplicity into advantage. At night, he and Soryn would walk the outer ridge, watching stars scatter like sparks above the planetary rings. She spoke of rebuilding, of a new alliance, of changing the Empire's creed one world at a time. He listened, content to let her voice be the fire that guided them. "You still believe in them," he said one evening. "After all this?" She turned to him, her eyes reflecting twin stars. "I believe in what they could be. Isn't that what you humans are good at? Seeing what's not yet real." He smiled softly. "It's our only real magic." She laughed then, the sound carried by the wind, mingling with the hum of distant engines. Weeks passed. The colony grew stronger, its defenses adapting, its people slowly learning the rhythm of cooperation. Yet Arin felt the shadow moving again. Rumors of unrest in the core worlds, whispers that factions blamed Soryn for her father's fading health. One night, as he was repairing a field generator, a coded transmission reached him, a human voice, faint and distorted. Arin, this is Command Node Theta. Earth survivors aboard the Ark Horizon requesting contact. Repeat, requesting contact. His breath caught. Earth? There weren't supposed to be any survivors. He played the message twice, then a third time. It was real, imperfect, desperate, human. He found Soryn watching the night sky from the ridge. They're alive, he said simply. She turned, confusion flashing into realization. Your people? He nodded. A colony ship. They made it through. She studied him for a long moment. Then you must go to them. He hesitated. And leave you to face the Empire alone. You forget, she said, smiling faintly. I have my own sword now. She lifted her hand, revealing a new weapon forged in the human style, its edge tempered with alien light. You taught me that strength isn't inherited. It's learned. His heart tightened, pride and sorrow entwined. Then maybe we both found what we came here for. They stood together until dawn, the first sunlight glinting off two blades, one forged in memory, one in hope. The horizon blazed with gold as the shuttle engines roared to life. Soryn touched his cheek, her fingers trembling despite her composure. You'll come back, she asked. If there's a world left to come back to, he said. She kissed him softly, a promise neither of them could name. As he boarded the ship, she watched until he was gone. The human who had taught an empire that weakness could wield strength sharper than any light. The void between stars was quieter than Arin remembered. The horizon's signal pulsed faintly in the darkness like a heartbeat barely clinging to life, guiding his shuttle through fields of debris and frozen dust. He'd flown for 16 days without rest, sleeping in a chair with the sword across his knees, the hum of the engines a lullaby for a soldier without a battlefield. Each day, he listened to the message again, the faint human voice repeating coordinates, hope worn thin by distance. He thought of Soryn often, of her eyes when he left, the steadiness that masked the same fear he carried. Somewhere beyond the silence, two species were trying to become something new, and he carried their fragile dream in the space between his ribs. When the horizon finally appeared, it was not the shining arc he had imagined, but a wounded relic drifting near a collapsed moon. Its hull was scarred, its lights dimmed, the once proud emblem of Earth barely visible beneath layers of cosmic frost. Arin docked manually. No response from the bridge, no automated greeting. The airlock opened with a groan, and stale air rushed out, carrying the scent of rust and forgotten years. He stepped inside, his boots echoing on metal floors. The corridors were dark, lit only by the emergency glow strips that flickered like dying embers. He could feel the weight of memory pressing down, humanity's last exhale preserved in cold silence. Is anyone alive? His voice, carried down the hall, answered only by the hum of distant machinery. Then a sound, faint, mechanical. A maintenance drone floated into view, its sensors flickering uncertainly. It scanned him, then chirped once and projected a weak hologram. A woman's face, human, streaked with static. If you're receiving this, you've reached the horizon. We're in cryostasis. Systems failing. Core breach imminent. Please. The image distorted and vanished. Arin's stomach turned cold. Cryostasis. If the core failed, every sleeper aboard would die in their dreams. He broke into a run. The cryo bay stretched like a cathedral of ice, rows upon rows of pods glowing faintly blue. Frost clung to every surface. He counted hundreds, maybe thousands, all filled. The hum of the core was wrong, uneven, faltering. He reached the main console and began working through the alien interface, thankful that some systems still ran on universal logic. The reactor's magnetic containment was degrading. The AI had rerouted power to the cryo systems, sacrificing itself to keep the humans alive. You stubborn machine, Arin muttered. You learned from us after all. He stripped the casing from the control panel and began rewiring manually, his fingers numb, his breath clouding in the cold air. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the hiss of coolant lines and the rhythm of his heartbeat. At last, the reactor stabilized, barely enough to sustain the cryo field. He leaned against the console, exhausted, then froze as one of the pods hissed open behind him. Light spilled out, and a woman gasped, clutching at the edges as frost melted from her skin. Arin turned slowly. She was human, mid-30s, hair pale from cryogenic fade, eyes wide with confusion. Who are you?" she stammered. "Arin Kale," he said softly. "I came from Virellan Prime. You sent a signal." Her gaze darted past him, searching. How long have we been out?" He hesitated. "Almost 80 years. The truth hit her like a blow. She sank to her knees, shaking. "Then Earth, gone," he said gently. "But humanity isn't." She looked up, studying his face as though deciding whether to believe him. "We're supposed to find a world," she whispered. "A place to begin again." Arin nodded. "Then maybe I can help you find it." She introduced herself as Captain Mara Lean, the Horizon's last commanding officer before the ship went dark. Over the next hours, as more pods were revived, the scale of their survival became clear. Less than a quarter of the crew could be safely awakened before the systems collapsed. Still, against all odds, life stirred again aboard the Ark. When Arin told them of Soryn and the alliance forming at the colonies, skepticism rippled through the revived crew. "You're saying we'd ally with aliens?" one man scoffed. "The same kind who crushed our defenses and burned the cradle?" Arin met his anger calmly. "Yes, because they learned something from us, that arrogance kills faster than bullets." Mara studied him quietly before speaking. "You married one of them," she said. "You must have seen something worth trusting." Arin smiled faintly. "I saw someone who still believed survival wasn't the same as living. That silenced them." For the first time in decades, a sliver of purpose flickered through the shadows of despair. They worked tirelessly for days, repairing the ship with parts scavenged from the wrecked moon nearby. Arin taught them Virellan repair patterns, elegant, efficient designs that merged seamlessly with human improvisation. The result was crude but functional. Soon, power flowed again through the corridors, the horizon groaning like an old beast waking from a long sleep. In the flicker of restored light, Arin saw reflections of two worlds learning to breathe side by side. But peace was fragile in the cold. Late one shift, as he calibrated the drive, Mara approached him quietly. "There's something you should see," she said. She led him to the observation deck, where the stars burned close and sharp. A fleet shimmered in the distance. Not Virellan, not Catherine. Something else. Sleek, black ships with no visible engines, moving faster than light should allow. "We picked up their signal an hour ago," Mara said. "It's encrypted, not human." Arin's hand went to his sword instinctively, though it was useless in vacuum. "You think they followed us? Or they were waiting for us?" she replied. The ships vanished suddenly, slipping between folds of light. Arin stared into the empty sky, unease twisting through him. "Whatever they are," he murmured, "they know we're here." They tracked the phantom fleet for days, but it moved like a mirage, vanishing whenever the sensors focused. Some of the crew whispered of ghosts, of ancient machines that haunted dead systems. Arin didn't believe in ghosts, only in consequences. "Every war leaves things behind," he told Mara as they pored over telemetry. "Weapons, warnings, or something worse." She nodded grimly. "Then we'll find out which." The horizon limped toward a derelict station near the edge of the system, the source of the phantom echoes. As they approached, its lights flickered awake as if recognizing them. "Someone's home," Mara murmured. Arin's hand brushed the hilt at his side. Then we knock. Inside, the air was thick with dust and cold static. Symbols unlike any language Arin knew crawled along the walls, glowing faintly when touched. The crew spread out in cautious silence, their footsteps muffled. At the station's heart, they found a sphere of black glass suspended in a cage of light. It pulsed with rhythmic energy, not random, patterned. "A transmitter," Mara whispered. Arin frowned. "Or a seed." When he reached closer, the pulse quickened, syncing with his heartbeat. A low voice filled the chamber. Neither human nor alien, but something in between, a resonance that felt like memory itself. You woke us too soon. The light flared, and images flooded his mind. Stars dying, empires collapsing, the Virellans fleeing the ruins of another civilization long before humanity learned fire. The Catharin had not been the first predators to challenge them. The voice continued, layered and vast. We were the architects of the first suns. We built and unbuilt worlds. But you small, fragile things carry the one element we lost, hunger. Arin stumbled back, clutching his head as the visions faded. Mara caught him. What did it say? He steadied himself. That it remembers us. And it's not sure if that's a blessing. When they tried to leave, the doors sealed. The sphere's glow intensified, threads of light reaching like tendrils toward the consoles. Systems on the horizon flickered, hijacked remotely. It's taking control, Mara shouted. Arin drew his sword. Instinctive, absurd in the face of code and light. Yet the moment the blade touched the floor, the glow recoiled as if burned. The hum faltered. Metal, he realized. It's reacting to the alloy. The others watched as he pressed the blade's edge against one of the conduits. The alien light retreated completely, the station shuddering as if afraid. Mara stared. How? Because it remembers, Arin said. This metal was forged from Earth's last dying sun. Maybe even gods respect that. They escaped barely in time. The station imploded silently, leaving behind only a swirl of ash and light. A fragment of the sphere clung to the ship's hull, pulsing faintly, a remnant that refused to die. Arin ordered it sealed in the cargo hold, but at night he could feel it, like a whisper in his dreams. Hunger, it said. Choice. Two words looping endlessly. When he told Mara, she looked uneasy. Maybe it wants to understand you, she said. Or maybe it wants to become you. He didn't answer. In the darkness of space, even reflection felt like a trap. Meanwhile, back on Virellan Prime, messages arrived sporadically. Soryn's encoded transmissions carried across light years. Arin read them between shifts, her voice steady even as unrest spread through the Empire. They're afraid, she wrote, but they're also listening. The colonies stand with me. The Emperor fades, but his final order was simple, to build what we lost. Arin smiled sadly. She was leading now as he had always known she could, not with power, but with conviction. He sent back recordings of the Horizon's revival, of humans and Virellans working side by side in the cold void. Proof, he said in his message, that weakness learns faster than strength. Weeks later, the fragment awoke. It projected light across the cargo bay, forming an image of a world, half terraformed, half burned. Coordinates, Mara said. It wants us to go there. Arin studied the map. The system lay beyond known Virellan charts. A test, maybe, he murmured, or an invitation. Against every protocol, he gave the order. The Horizon turned its scarred hull toward the unknown star. The journey lasted 6 days, each one heavier than the last. As they neared, the planet came into view, blue and green, wrapped in storms. It looked eerily like Earth, but the surface shimmered with the same black metal as the sphere. Not natural, Mara said softly. Someone built this. They descended through clouds of silver dust, landing on a plain of fused glass. Towers jutted from the horizon, remnants of an ancient city. The air was breathable, heavy with ozone. Arin stepped out first, sword aside, boots sinking into glass dust. The silence felt alive. Then the ground pulsed, and light spread beneath their feet, forming a symbol. 2 intersecting circles, one bright, one dark. The same pattern had appeared in his dreams. Welcome home, a voice said, not aloud, but through every surface, every atom. Mara drew her weapon, eyes wide. It's the same intelligence. No, Arin said quietly. It's older. From the ruins rose figures of light, humanoid but faceless, each motion smooth as water. They surrounded the humans, but made no move to attack. The voice resonated again. We sought perfection and found silence. You sought survival and found purpose. Perhaps now, we learn together. Arin raised his sword slightly. And if we refuse? The nearest figure tilted its head. Then the cycle continues, and all we built will fall again. The air shimmered. Images of Virellan Prime appeared. Soryn's city under siege by those who feared her reforms. Arin's chest tightened. They're showing us the future, Mara breathed. Or the consequence, he said. He knelt, driving the sword point into the glass. Then teach us, he said. But understand, we don't kneel to gods. We learn from them. The light paused, as though considering. Then every figure bowed. So be it. The ground shook once, and the black towers lit from within, transmitting data across the stars. On Virellan Prime, Soryn looked up as new constellations formed, patterns like wings or perhaps bridges. The Empire's old code dissolved into new frequencies carrying human words, memory, choice, hunger. For the first time in known history, two civilizations shared the same dream. Arin watched the lights rise into the sky, the wind cool against his face. Behind him, Mara whispered, "You realize what you've done?" He sheathed his sword, started something no one can control. "And that doesn't scare you?" "Everything scares me," he said quietly. "That's how humans know we're alive." The alien light shimmered brighter, casting their shadows long across the glass plane. Somewhere beyond sight, a new age began, not of empires or gods, but of those who remembered what both had forgotten, the strength of imperfection. The planet they had called Eidos burned with quiet brilliance beneath the stars, its surface alive with alien circuitry and shifting storms. Arin stood at the edge of one of the black towers, the glass plain stretching endlessly below. Around him, the wind whispered with half-heard voices. Data streams carried through the atmosphere like ghosts of the past. The ancient intelligence had not spoken since that night when it opened the skies, but its presence lingered in every vibration, watching, waiting. The crew of the Horizon worked tirelessly among the ruins, decoding fragments of forgotten technology. To them, this was discovery. To Arin, it was a question that refused to fade. What kind of beings could shape life and light so easily and still fail to endure? Mara joined him at dawn, her eyes rimmed with fatigue. "The transmissions are spreading faster than we expected," she said. "Half the colonies have picked up the signal already. Some are calling it divine." Arin's jaw tightened. The last time people started worshipping light, they forgot what it meant to see. She gave him a tired smile. "And you? What do you call it?" He watched the horizon glow red where the sun breached the clouds. A warning. The wind carried the scent of ozone and rain, and for a moment he imagined Soryn standing beside him again, her laughter breaking the silence. He hadn't heard from her in 3 weeks. That silence weighed heavier than any cosmic riddle. Far away, on Virellan Prime, Soryn faced her own storm. The council's chambers were fractured by debate, the Emperor's death leaving a vacuum that no single voice could fill. Factions rose, some loyal to her, others to tradition. Holographic banners of rebellion flickered through the lower districts, demanding purity, demanding isolation. She had quelled uprisings before, but this was different. The whispers spoke of the human infection, that she had diluted the Empire's divine heritage by uniting with Arin. Yet when she stood before the assembly, her voice carried the calm certainty of truth. "You fear corruption," she said. "But corruption is already here, not in blood, but in pride. We forgot how to learn. And when we forget that, we cease to live." Her words rippled through the chamber, unsettling even her enemies. She returned to her quarters after the speech, weary but unbroken. Her advisor, Lyrith, waited within, once a friend, now a cautious shadow. "They plot behind closed doors," he said quietly. "They call for your removal before the cycle's end." Soryn unfastened her armor, the bioluminescent strands dimming across her skin. "Then they'll have to act quickly," she replied. "Because I won't." Lyrith hesitated, studying her. "You believe the human will return?" Her gaze drifted toward the storm-wrapped horizon. "He always returns." But doubt crept beneath her resolve, a human hope buried within alien poise. Back on Eidos, the days grew stranger. The black towers hummed with deeper frequency, their pulses aligning with the horizon systems. Arin noticed it first, the way lights flickered in response to his movements, the subtle echo of his own heartbeat reflected through the ruins. The intelligence was learning, adapting, perhaps even imitating. Mara feared it, but Arin sensed something more: curiosity. He spent nights studying the resonance, his sword laid beside the console. When he touched the blade's surface, the hum shifted, harmonizing. "You hear me?" he whispered into the dark. The reply was faint but real, like the echo of his own thought. "We remember." It began with a tremor. Sensors screamed warnings across every deck. "Planetary shift," someone shouted. The towers blazed white, sending pillars of energy into the clouds. The air turned liquid with power. Arin rushed to the observation deck as the world beneath them pulsed like a heart. From the sky descended a structure, vast, ringed in light. Not built, but grown, its edges still dripping molten glass. The intelligence spoke through every comm system at once. "The cycle renews. Witness the rebirth." Arin's stomach tightened. Rebirth of what? No answer. Only the rising pitch of the storm. Mara's voice crackled through the intercom. "If this keeps escalating, it'll tear the crust apart." Arin gripped the railing. "Then we shut it down." He led the strike team toward the nearest energy conduit, their boots sinking into molten dust. Lightning crawled across the ground in fractal webs, forming patterns that burned into memory. The air shimmered with heat and meaning. They reached the base of the nearest tower, where a column of light rose skyward, pulsing in rhythm with the world's core. "There!" Mara shouted above the roar. "That's the relay." Arin drew his sword, the metal catching the glow. "Cut the power at the source." "You can't be serious," she yelled. "That's planetary-scale energy. So was the last mistake we made." He stepped into the beam. The light consumed him, filling every nerve with burning clarity. Arin felt his heartbeat sync with the planet's pulse, his vision fracturing into patterns of sound and color. Memories that weren't his flashed before him. The birth of suns, the collapse of civilizations, the quiet regret of creators who had once believed perfection was eternal. Through it all, one truth echoed. They feared ending more than they loved beginning. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stay conscious, to anchor his mind in something human. Soryn's voice came to him unbidden, the echo of laughter under a violet sky, the warmth of her hand in his. That memory cut through the flood like a blade. The beam faltered, the light bending around him instead of through. The intelligence spoke again, its voice strained, almost uncertain. "You resist." "I remember," he gasped. "And that's what you've forgotten." He drove the sword into the heart of the conduit. The explosion of light threw him backward, every bone in his body vibrating with pain. When the glare faded, the tower's pulse had slowed, its rhythm dimming to something steady, almost peaceful. The storm above began to quiet. Mara's team rushed forward, dragging him clear of the heat. "You insane bastard," she said, half laughing, half sobbing. "You just talked a planet into sleeping." He coughed, smiling weakly. "Humans have been putting angry gods to bed for centuries. For hours they worked to stabilize the remaining systems, rerouting the excess energy into orbiting satellites. The catastrophe had been averted, but the cost was clear. The intelligence had fragmented. Its last transmission flickered through the ship's displays. We see now. Life continues through imperfection. Then silence. In the aftermath, the crew gathered around the viewport, watching the planet's glow settle into tranquil blue. For a moment, it looked alive again, reborn not as a machine, but as something new. Mara rested a hand on Arin's shoulder. "You think it's over?" He shook his head. "No, it's just remembering who it used to be." That night, as he lay in the infirmary, he dreamed of Soryn. She stood on the steps of her palace, her armor cracked but her gaze unwavering. "You promised you'd come back," she said. "You promised to bring more than a sword." He reached out, but the distance between them was filled with light, the same cold radiance he had just faced. "I'm coming," he whispered, and woke to the soft hum of the ship preparing for flight. Mara stood nearby, arms crossed. "We could transmit to Virellan Prime again." Your wife's rebellion is making headlines across half the empire. He blinked. Rebellion. Or revolution, she corrected. Depends on who's telling the story. Soryn's latest message arrived hours later, fragmented by interference. Her voice trembled but never broke. They've moved against me. The Loyalists have a citadel. I'm holding the colony lines. If you get this, don't come back for me. Finish what you started. End the cycle. Arin listened in silence, jaw tight. She's buying them time, he said. Mara looked at him warily. You can't go alone. I won't, he replied. But I can't stay. He stood, every muscle aching, and retrieved his sword. Its surface shimmered faintly, reflecting starlight like memory made metal. Plot a course, he said. Virellan Prime. The journey back was swift and perilous. Fragments of the ancient intelligence guided them through wormhole corridors, invisible hands parting the void. As they emerged near the home system, the scale of the conflict became clear. Fleets of Virellan ships clashing in orbit, their energy weapons turning the night into a storm of color. Arin's heart pounded. Soryn, he whispered. The horizon descended through debris fields, alarms shrieking. Mara gripped the console. We can't land in the capital. It's a war zone. Arin's gaze hardened. Then we land where it matters. They came down in the outer districts, where smoke and fire painted the streets. Rebel banners, Soryn's crest intertwined with the human sigil, fluttered amid the ruins. Soldiers stared as the horizon settled, its engines casting dust and ash into spirals. When Arin stepped out, sword at his side, a hush spread through the crowd. The human, someone whispered. The consort returns. He raised his voice. Where is she? A young officer stepped forward, armor dented, eyes fierce. Holding the east gate. They've cut her off. Arin nodded once. Then we take it back. He moved through the war-torn corridors of the city, each street echoing with the clash of light and steel. The Virellans fought with radiant grace. Their weapons like music turned deadly, but the rebels, humans and aliens together, fought with desperation, their unity raw but unyielding. Arin wove through the chaos, blade flashing with every step. He was slower than he once was, his injuries from IDOS still raw, yet every swing carried purpose. When he reached the eastern wall, the sight froze him. Soryn standing amid wreckage, her armor cracked, her energy core flickering, but her stance unbroken. She saw him immediately, disbelief flickering into fierce relief. You shouldn't have come, she shouted over the roar. You told me not to, he replied. I never was good at orders. Together they fought, human sword and alien light weaving into a dance of survival. The Loyalist commander descended on wings of plasma, his form burning like a comet. Abominations, he roared. You defile our blood with weakness. Arin met his charge head-on. Their blades collided, light against steel, creating a burst that lit the battlefield. Then let weakness teach you fear, Arin growled. The duel raged through collapsing archways and burning gardens. Soryn held the line as her forces rallied behind them. When at last the commander struck, Arin pivoted, driving his sword through the gap in the armor, the same way he'd studied the Virellan drills years ago. The energy flared, then faded. The commander fell, his weapon clattering against stone. Silence spread across the field as the Loyalists faltered, their faith shaken. Soryn stood beside Arin, breathing hard, her face streaked with ash and light. It's done, she said. He nodded, gripping her hand tightly. No, he said softly. It's beginning. Above them, the clouds parted, revealing the constellations newly rewritten by IDOS transmission. Across the Empire, battle signals quieted as the same words echoed through every frequency. Memory. Choice. Hunger. It was neither command nor creed, only truth. The soldiers lowered their weapons. The storm that had defined their lives for generations finally broke, replaced by the trembling quiet of possibility. Soryn turned to him, voice unsteady. You came back. Arin smiled faintly. Told you I would. The blade in his hand gleamed once more, not as a weapon, but as a promise kept. The war had ended without celebration. The fires burned themselves out across the capital, and for the first time in generations, the skies above Virellan Prime were clear. Ash drifted through the dawn like slow-falling snow, softening the sharp lines of the shattered city. Arin stood among the ruins of the East Gate where the final battle had been won, his sword resting point down in the fractured stone. Around him, soldiers moved silently, gathering the wounded, dismantling barricades, planting banners not of victory, but of rebuilding. The air smelled of ozone and rain. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound of quiet fill him, a sound rarer than peace itself. Soryn approached from the remnants of the command post, her armor unbound, streaked with soot and plasma residue. The luminescent patterns across her skin dimmed and brightened as she walked, reacting to exhaustion and relief in equal measure. She paused beside him, gazing at the rising sun. "They've surrendered," she said softly. "The council has agreed to stand down and open negotiations." Arin nodded. "You saved them." She shook her head. "No, we did." Her voice was steady, but he could see the tremor in her hands. "What happens now?" she asked. He looked toward the horizon, where smoke curled in slow spirals. "Now we learn if peace can survive the people who wanted war." In the following days, the Empire shifted like a sleeping giant stirred awake. Soryn called for an assembly that spanned every colony, human, Virellan, and hybrid settlements alike. The message was simple: unity through imperfection. She spoke not as a princess, but as one who had seen both worlds burn and still chosen hope. Arin watched her from the sidelines, unseen among the crowd, pride and ache warring in his chest. She had grown beyond him, perhaps beyond anyone. Yet when her speech ended and the crowd roared approval, her eyes sought him first, a silent acknowledgement that their bond had built this fragile dawn. He smiled faintly, then slipped away before anyone noticed the human consort among the conquerors. The citadel's reconstruction began almost immediately. Broken spires were reforged from living glass, new halls raised where the old had fallen. But Arin found no rest within those shining walls. He spent his days in the lower districts, teaching workers how to rebuild without relying solely on living machines. "If you make it by hand," he told them, "you remember its worth." Many laughed at first. What could bare human labor do compared to the Empire's bioforges? Yet when their first human-built bridge stood firm after a tremor, the laughter turned to awe. Soon, mixed teams of engineers adopted his methods, creating a new craft that blended Virellan growth with human resilience. At night, Soryn would find him among the scaffolds, their meetings quiet, unguarded. "You should be beside me in the high court," she'd say. "They'll follow you now." He always smiled at that. "I'm better down here. People remember me as the man who broke things, not the one who rules them." She'd sigh, her hand tracing the edge of his jaw. "Always the soldier pretending to be a builder." "Maybe," he'd reply softly, "but every builder starts with something broken." Their laughter would echo through the empty streets, mingling with the hum of distant repair drones. For a moment, even the ruins seemed to breathe easier. But peace was never simple. Reports began to arrive from the outer colonies. Energy fluctuations, ghost signals repeating fragments of the ancient message from Eidos. Some said the intelligence had awakened again, evolving within the data streams the Empire used to rebuild. Others claimed it was something new entirely, an echo shaped by the merging of human and Virellan thought. Soryn convened the scientific council, but fear crept into the discussions. "We meddled too much," one elder warned. "The humans' influence has awakened a hunger in the machines." Arin heard of the remark and said nothing, though deep inside he wondered if they were right. Late one evening, as the twin moons hung low over the horizon, Arin stood once more on the palace balcony. The wind carried the faint hum of energy grids reborn, harmonizing with a whisper of distant waves. He thought of Earth, of the cold hull of the horizon adrift in darkness, of every scar humanity had carried across the stars. Then he thought of Soryn, not the alien princess who once doubted him, but the leader who had learned to love imperfection as fiercely as he did. The sword at his side gleamed softly in the moonlight. He had drawn it for the last time, he hoped, though part of him knew peace demanded vigilance. "We keep the blade sharp," he murmured, "but only to remind us what it costs to use it." That night, sleep refused him. He wandered the lower districts, where construction lanterns glowed faintly and the scent of molten crystal filled the air. The people, human and Virellan alike, nodded to him as he passed, some in respect, others in quiet gratitude. To them, he was a bridge between species, though he never sought the title. He paused before the monument rising near the plaza, a sculpture of two hands, one human, one alien, joined at the wrist. Beneath it, the inscription read strength through remembering. He traced the letters with his fingers, feeling the faint pulse of power beneath the surface. For the first time since the war, he allowed himself to hope it might last. A soft voice broke his reverie. "You always find the quiet corners," Soryn said, stepping into the glow. She wore no crown, only a cloak of woven starlight that shifted like water. "They suit me," he replied. She studied him, smiling faintly. "You've changed," she said. "You used to carry the world on your shoulders. Now you let it breathe." He looked at her, the lines of exhaustion and grace merging in her face. Maybe it learned to carry itself. She laughed softly, and in that sound he heard everything they had built. The laughter of survival, not victory. When she reached for his hand, the contact was simple, steady, human. Weeks later, the council officially ratified the new accord, a declaration binding all sentient races of the system under a single charter, that strength would never again be measured by perfection, but by persistence. The ceremony was held beneath the rebuilt citadel dome, now open to the stars. Soryn stood at the center, addressing a crowd that filled every tier. Arin remained at her side, silent, the sword sheathed but visible. Her speech was short, almost plain. "We learned that weakness teaches courage," she said. "That loss teaches memory. And that to build something lasting, you must first understand what it means to break." Her words rippled through the hall, the sound of an empire finally exhaling. Afterward, Arin slipped away to the garden terraces. The air was warm, fragrant with the vines that glowed gently at night. He found Mara there, older now, her uniform marked by the dust of 100 worlds. "Leaving again?" she asked, reading his silence. He nodded. "There's work beyond the outer rim." The Horizon's crew found traces of the IDOS signal near the void colonies. If it's rebuilding, someone needs to guide it. She smiled knowingly. "You always did have trouble sitting still." He chuckled. "Someone has to make sure the mistakes we fix stay fixed." "And what about her?" Mara asked softly. "She knows," he said. "She always knows." He departed at dawn. The Horizon, newly restored and carrying both human and Virellan engineers, rose through the golden haze of morning. From the balcony, Soryn watched the engines flare, her expression unreadable but her heart steady. She didn't call out, didn't need to. Some promises didn't need words. In the control room, Arin stared out at the expanding horizon, his reflection merging with the stars. The galaxy ahead was vast and uncharted, but it no longer felt hostile. For the first time in his life, he wasn't running from extinction or toward vengeance. He was simply moving forward, the most human act of all. As the ship slipped into light space, he looked once more at the sword mounted beside his seat. Its blade, dulled by time and battle, reflected the starlight like a fading echo. He reached out, touching the metal lightly. "We've done enough fighting," he murmured. "Now, let's build something worth defending." The hum of the engines deepened, blending with the rhythm of his heartbeat. In that sound, he could almost hear Soryn's laughter again, distant but eternal. Somewhere behind them, the Virellan Empire and humanity stood together, learning, rebuilding, remembering. And somewhere ahead, the future waited, uncertain, imperfect but alive. The stars stretched into rivers of light, and Arin closed his eyes, letting the motion carry him. He thought of the first day he met her, an alien princess looking down on a fragile man from a forgotten world. She had called him weak then, and perhaps she had been right. But strength, he had learned, wasn't what held a blade steady. It was what kept your hand open when the world begged you to close it. As the void folded around the ship, he smiled to himself, not as a warrior, not as a husband, but as a man who had finally learned to live in the space between.